So Peter Svarzbein again, son of immigrants, grandson of a Holocaust survivor. My grandmother actually fled from Munkac, from Czechoslovakia. She fled to Belgium during the war. We had 10 brothers and sisters. My Aunt Helen came to Philadelphia before the war, and then afterwards, that was the only person that my grandmother knew as well. So can certainly understand that. I wanted to start off with a quote here from an amazing Chicano and Mexican-American performance artist, Guillermo Gomez Peña. His quote is, "An artist imagines a better world and tries to render it in surprising ways, and this becomes a way for his or her audience to experience the possibilities of freedom that they can't find in reality." This was a quote that really inspired me during my time at the School of Visual Arts in New York when I started the El Paso Transnational Trolley Project in the beginning of 2009. I was at graduate school, kind of a little bit trying to understand exactly what it was that we were making and supposed to be making and what other work people were making, and I wanted to do a project that could help talk about home and where I'm from, which is El Paso, Texas, the capital border. This right here is a map from the 1925 city plan of El Paso. It locates El Paso basically as the center of the Southwest. It is actually directly located in the middle of the U.S.-Mexico border, that 2,000-mile-long imaginary line that is so very real for so many people, but is also an imaginary one as well. Where El Paso is, just to give you guys a sense of where it is, it's closer to Los Angeles from El Paso than it is to Houston, Texas. So, and it's always been a place of crossing, right? El Paso is in the site of Mescalero, Apache, and Manzo land. It is places where there's fossils and human documentation from over 40,000 years ago. It also is a place of north-south crossing. The Camino Real de Tierra Adentro, the Spanish interior road, the most important highway in the Spanish Empire between Mexico City and Santa Fe. El Paso Norte, the Pass of the North, was the most important city to get up to the north and into Santa Fe. And it also is a city of important immense east to west crossing as well. Still to this day, it is the only snow-free route on the Transcontinental Railroad if you're trying to get goods east to west, as well as being right in the middle of the I-10 corridor. So anybody that's been in Los Angeles or Houston or New Orleans, you've probably driven on I-10, and that is, again, one of the most important highways as well. Probably a lot of people have seen a lot of news in El Paso about issues of asylum seekers and refugees coming through our community. That shouldn't be a surprise because this, again, literally has been a history of humans crossing through this mountain pass that we call home for tens of thousands of years. Just to give you a sense of where we are, El Paso, Juarez, and Las Cruces comprise the largest borderplex in the United States. Over here and there, and I'm not going to get into Cali Baja and Tijuana and San Diego, but we are basically sharing the same desert valley spread out with about 3 million people as well. It's a tremendous economic development engine as well, the fourth largest manufacturing hub in the Americas, the largest manufacturer of solar panels in the Western Hemisphere in North America is in Ciudad Juarez, with most of those going out on the rail and highways that we have in El Paso. And a whole lot of people cross through these ports of entry. In 2021, over 21 million people, pedestrians, cars, and cargo trucks cross through these borders. And that's really important to understand because, again, I think there's a lot of misperceptions of what the border is. The people think that people tend to travel either going one direction or not. Most of the people that come and cross through, we have about 85,000 people that cross through every single day to go back and forth between El Paso and Juarez, right? Imagine Manhattan and Brooklyn with an imaginary line in between. Do people come to cross to go to school? Yes. To go to work? Yes. To visit their family and their grandmothers? Sure. To go get a bite to eat and maybe watch a movie? Sure. To go to Walmart? Absolutely. That's a relationship between El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. And that relationship is one that I think is really important for a lot of families growing up in El Paso, and one that was particularly special to me, but a whole lot of other families. No matter how rich or how poor you are in El Paso, people have different reasons for wanting to cross. And that crossing was really put into a lot of stress about 12 years ago when I started the project. There was a number of cartels that were fighting for this turf, the same trade routes that made it so attractive for economic trade was also a drug plaza as well. And in 2010, you had more people killed in Ciudad Juarez than in all of Afghanistan. Close to 15,000 people were killed from 2009 to 2012. And it was something that really impacted both communities, right, because they're so far connected. And one of the things that we've always done is we've always had these ways to cross between our cities, right? Whether it was a mule-drawn carriage in the late 1800s to an electric streetcar line that started back in 1902 and ran until 1974, and you can see that there. We've always had different reasons for wanting to cross. And so for my thesis project at the School of Visual Arts, I wanted to have a project that could imagine something better for our communities and could write a lead letter to the city that raised me. And I felt it was really important that we continue to imagine that crossing at a time where families weren't crossing over and people were continuing to flee Juarez. I thought it was important that we remember that and insist that it occur. And so I was looking to do a project that, again, could imagine something better between us and connect our past and to our present and to our future. And so doing a lot of research and just working in school, decided that there was, again, remember that there was a streetcar that used to run between both of our cities. And it really was an engine of growth, economic growth, cultural sophistication, and familiarity. The same reason that makes El Paso such a dynamo was true back then. The highest grossing JCPenney's in the 1950s in the United States was not found in Los Angeles or downtown Chicago or New York. It was found in downtown El Paso. The highest growing Woolworths in the 1960s was in downtown El Paso because of our Mexican nationals, our brothers and sisters in Ciudad Juarez, that oftentimes would take one of the 19 streetcars that we had that ran between El Paso and Juarez every single day to go to work and to go to shop. This is a picture of Pete Ramirez. He was one of the old streetcar operators. Do not call them bus drivers. They get very, very upset if you call folks that. But this is one of the original images. These are all photos that I made. But this is one of the original decals that they had, so that's what he wore on there. And I just love the phrase there. And so how did we go and remind people about this? We created a poster ad campaign called the El Paso Transnational Trolley Project, reimagining the streetcar opening up again between El Paso and Ciudad Juarez at a time of a lot of violence and uncertainty. So how did we do that? We went and used a lot of non-traditional media platforms, basically trying to get this word and this message and this vision out about our past and our potential future to as many people as possible. So we did that, again, through a poster ad campaign. On your left, you see, on your right, you'll see one of our posters. The artist that played Alex, the trolley conductor, the Border's newest hero, is Manuel Martagon, who is one of my colleagues at SVA. He's a distinguished video and performance artist, incredible in his own right, from Puebla. And we created these very warm photos, warm posters, imagining a better future between the two communities, and we did a campaign kickoff at Sunland Park Mall on Thanksgiving weekend of 2010, and there's Alex and one of our trolley representatives as well. And we also worked with a lot of different local groups as well. At this time, I was going back and forth between New York and El Paso, staying with my parents. And we worked with a local arts and culture magazine called Fusion Magazine. They were distributed in Marfa, Chihuahua, Juarez, El Paso, Las Cruces, Socorro, and Albuquerque. And so we did a number of different ads, taking these fictional ads and putting it up in these magazines as well that were distributed throughout the frontera, as well as a really great centerfold of some streetcar track. In addition to that, we put up a lot of posters, both in El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. These were a number of historic photos that people were able to vote online on our Facebook page and others to see which historic photo they wanted to see put up on El Paso walls. And then you can see a number of the ads as well here. The one all the way over to the right was probably one of my favorite ones because it utilized the architecture of this downtown building to really create a three-dimensional effect with one of the old streetcar lines. And then I decided to come back to El Paso. I was invited to be part of a binational art exhibit as well as a downtown public art exhibit called Chalk the Block in El Paso. So about 2 months after graduating from SVA, I decided to come back to El Paso. I thought I'd be there for about 3 months. And this was art that we did the first day that I was back after coming back home. And so this was at the Panaderia Resiste, which is both a bakery and a cultural performance space in downtown Juarez. At the time that this was going on in 2011, it was pretty dangerous at the time. There were not a lot of people out on the streets. I brought my camera out to like a 7-Eleven over there, and the lady that was there at the store was completely freaked out. So it was intense. We also worked with different community groups. This was Miners Without Borders, where we had people recollect stories about the border while also recording stories of them growing up using the streetcar as well. And then when I came home, I started making portraits. Started taking portraits over 2 months of people from El Paso and Juarez and Las Cruces that eventually comprised a mosaic called Faces of the Frontera. This was a mosaic comprised of over 2,100 portraits of, again, citizens from El Paso and Juarez, everything from the UTEP NMSU kickoff game to the oldest high school football rivalry in El Paso, the Battle of the Claw between El Paso High School and Austin Panthers. And if you guys know anything about Texas and football, high school football, it's a very serious thing. The World Cup has nothing on high school football in Texas. And so we were able to go and project out this. And every portrait that we took was an opportunity to talk to people, too, about this history that we had between El Paso and Juarez, and to talk about what it would be like to go and see a streetcar running again between the two cities. Part of what we did was put this there as part of this Chalk the Block art festival. It's this great public art festival in the second weekend of October in El Paso, and you guys are all invited. If you notice, the back of this installation that we did is those centerfold pieces from Fusion Magazine as well. And so people could get their picture taken with Alex the trolley conductor. We also had a piñata of Alex the trolley conductor as well, because any good ad campaign needs to have a piñata. And we also encourage kids at our Trolley Conductors Club to go and paint their own vision of what colors they would want to see the streetcars as well. During this time, the city was also looking at, about 6 months after I started putting up these posters, the city had finished a feasibility study looking into an intracity streetcar line as well. And this was just another picture kind of seeing how we utilize the streetcar again within the community and culture of our El Paso. And so I bring up that feasibility study because of what happened next. When I came back to El Paso, I was invited to be part of a citizens review committee for our downtown plaza. And one of the ideas for the plaza was to keep these Luis Jimenez sculpture, the alligator sculpture in the middle of the plaza, while also having a splash pad and other amenities as well. And one of the ideas was to take one of those old streetcars that you saw in the desert and have it in the middle of our plaza, kind of like a Shake Shack, like a little cafe. The city manager at the time, in the beginning of 2012, when the final plans for San Jacinto Plaza were released, said that those streetcars couldn't be used for a restaurant, let alone run again, and FYI, we were trying to sell the streetcars to San Francisco. No disrespect to San Francisco. But I would rather celebrate our history than sell it to another community, no matter how nice that community is. And so, knowing at this time that the city was beginning to start a bond initiative to look at quality of life projects, things like trailheads, trails, a Mexican-American Cultural Center, a new children's museum in downtown, there was an opportunity to collect comment cards. And what we tried to do, and you can see that over here in the bottom right, we tried to hijack this bond initiative. And we basically offered citizens the ability to sign a comment card asking the city to fund a vintage streetcar corridor based upon the feasibility study that was recently completed about a year ago between the university and the downtown area, utilizing the very same streetcars that used to run between those two cities. And if you guys know anything about municipalities, there's a lot of studies that are done, and they almost always just end on shelves for years. So I would like to tell you that we were able to go and get this funded. We had collected over 5,000 signatures in about 2 months. However, during the special council meeting for this bond election, the city said that transportation could not be considered quality of life. I know, right? I know. Dubs. So, however, there was a great opportunity there. The head of the Texas Department of Transportation at the time was an El Paso native, born and raised, and he basically came up to a proposition with the city. Seeing that there was clear community support from over 5,000 signatures from a variety of residents across the city, the TxDOT commissioner at the time, Ted Houghton, told the city, if you come up with $3 million for a shovel-ready plan, I will find $97 million for a 5.7 mile long vintage streetcar line to connect UTEP and downtown here in El Paso. And so in June of 2014, you can see that over here highlighted, there was a $2.2 billion multimodal transportation package by the Texas Department of Transportation. You had TxDOT, the king of the highways, say that the future economic vitality of Texas could not be done by roads alone. There had to be other sources. And so pretty much almost all major cities got something, right? Houston got an extension of light rail. Austin got new light rail as well. A high-speed rail corridor study between Dallas and Austin, and tucked into that was $97 million for a streetcar line, refurbishing 6 vintage streetcars that used to run between El Paso and Juarez to have them back up and running on El Paso streets. And so that was done in the summer of 2014. I was obviously really excited about the project and wanted to see how far this project could go, and wanted to see how to help influence it and influence its impact. So in December 10th of 2014, I decided to announce my running for City Council for District 1. I was elected in a runoff election in June 13th of 2015, and November 2015, the streetcars, which were sitting in the desert for 40 years, were lifted up and taken to Brookville, Pennsylvania to be refurbished. And so you can sort of see here the beginning stages. What's really amazing about these streetcars is that they were able to keep the original shells, the very same PCC streetcars, Art Deco designed streetcars that were approved by FDR during the middle of the Great Depression, who wanted a streetcar that could run in any city in the entire United States, but it's got the best of both worlds. Almost exactly like when my father came to El Paso. You could have the economic opportunities of the United States with the cultural life and vitality of Latino America. But in the case of the streetcars, they were ADA compliant. They had something that they did not have when they were running in the 60s and 70s, which is air conditioning and heating, as well as Wi-Fi as well. And so in October of 2018, streetcars came back to life after being gone for, again, almost 40 years. It was a pretty amazing evening there as well, but what was amazing is the impacts that it's had there as well. Since the streetcar has opened up, we've seen 5 new hotels open up within downtown El Paso. 3 of them have been historic renovation projects, including Conrad Hilton's first skyscraper, the Plaza Hotel on the left, as well as a number of Art Deco classics as well. We've also seen a lot of outpouring of cultural initiatives as well, including a trolley track series. Imagine NPR Tiny Desk on a streetcar line, and then you'll understand what we were doing with bands. We also had a read and ride with our local libraries, and also a lot of encouragement with our USL soccer team, the El Paso Locomotives, and a tremendous amount of families that would ride the streetcar to the El Paso Chihuahuas home games as well. Fear the Ears. That's the AAA affiliate for the Padres. It was really amazing to see it, because what you see families, both young and old, going together. And a lot of people that were over the ages of 60 or 70 in El Paso remember when they were 6 years old and riding on the streetcars as well. And so it's really been something that's been heading into, again, into the zeitgeist of El Paso. This was a picture that I do a Halloween portrait booth with our district, so that was a picture over there. That is the 2018 City Council picture. The mayor was not too happy with where I was stationed on that, but when you're the photographer of the group portrait, you give your editor the pictures you want. So that was the one that they got there. You're welcome, Mayor Margot. And so that is pretty much it. It's been an amazing opportunity to do that. I can say that all the conversations we're having here, art creates a space, I really think, to be able to go and look through these ideas and have these conversations. Speaking as somebody, as a policymaker, having this kind of flexibility to imagine something and to fight for it like that is very hard to do within the policy space. But when you're talking about interacting with people's imaginations within the context of an art practice, incredible things are possible. And so with that, I want to thank you guys all. Thank you again, Doris and Jose, Doctor. Thanks again, everyone.